Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to this night-ending bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a quick couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. The merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this night-ending bonus upload, shall we? Today's first West Virginia subscriber submitted experience. Good morning, Jeff. I'd like to start off by saying I recently discovered your channel and I am obsessed. Last year, my fiance had an encounter with what I believe to be two cryptids. He was in his 18-wheeler driving by a state park in West Virginia. He was able to stop the truck and look at the first creature for at least a moment. The creature was within feet of his truck and unafraid, undeterred by the noise of the truck. He saw the creature pick up a dead deer lying next to the road, running up over the embankment. He was shaken and shocked by what he had seen. He said that this thing was huge. He said he wasn't looking down from the truck, but looking out at it. He said this thing looked like it could have ripped the truck to pieces if it wanted to. I began researching and reached out to a local cryptid investigator as well. The closest thing that I found, and to compare it to, was the Andrew Sarchus. The cryptid investigator did a story on my fiance and his sighting on his Facebook page. He received 3 other reports of the sighting of this creature. There were 2 in the state park and 1 5 miles away. So, I gotta speak to this woman again, actually, because I've never really spoken to her about this. But an Andrew Sarchus is a hippopotamus. It looks like it could be a dogman, but it's not a bipedal creature. It is closely related to the hippo. It is not bipedal, it's a quadruped. So I'm wondering if it picked up the deer using its mouth, or if it actually used hands. Kind of a vague description as well. So I'm gonna reach out and see what other information I can get from this person about this experience, because I'd like to know more. An Andrew Sarchus does resemble, actually, it looks like a wahila. If you look at it quick, a couple of pictures. But then when you start to look and you research the species and stuff like that, you then are like, oh my God, this thing is related to a hippopotamus. At first they were classifying it as kind of in the pig family, which I believe hippos and pigs are in the same species or genus or whatever, but definitely got my interest piqued. So I will keep you guys in the loop on that. Let's get into today's second subscriber story out of Virginia. Jeff, my first experience happened around 86, 87. I was young, but I remember it well. It was a clear summer day, and I was doing what most youths do, playing and not having a care in the world. We used to have 3 dogs at the time, a shepherd mix named Doggy Dog, a terrier named Buster, almost looked exactly like Benji from the old movies, and a short-haired collie named Trixie. They were some of the best companions a kid could have. Now Trixie was a very energetic dog, protector of the house. The other 2 were strays that my parents had taken in. Trixie was acquired as a pup from a seller. Our house was on the outskirts of a town surrounded by 25 acres of woodland. I used to run those woods a lot, build forts, play hide and seek, etc. Always had a feeling that I was being watched, though. You know that feeling like when you're alone, but you're not really alone. Well, my mom usually let the dogs out several times a day to do their business. On this particular day, only Trixie went out. We had a small fenced-in area right at the back door off of the breezeway. There's a huge walnut tree at the far corner of the fence, just inside of it. So, when my mom opened the door, Trixie flew out. The other 2 stayed in the living room. After a little coaxing, Mom figured they didn't want to go out anyway. No more than 5 minutes went by when my mom went out to let Trixie back in. Trixie was gone, and by gone, I mean she vanished without a trace. Now, she was around 6 years old and always would come back when let outside the fence, but this time, she was in the fenced-in area. Only thing we found were a couple of tufts of black fur on the fence, and Dad seemed to think he had seen a small drag mark in front of the tree. We offered a $100 reward at first, which went up to $300 a few weeks later. We searched the woods, farms nearby, basically all directions around our little town without a trace, no leads, nothing. As the years have gone by and I've come to educate myself on the cryptids, I've really leaned towards Dogman as the culprit. It was either hiding up in that walnut tree or just in the wood line, which was 12 feet or so from the fence. As listeners, you can be the judge. There were no holes under the fence, and the gates were locked. Something came over the fence and snatched her. Oh, I forgot to mention, the fence was a wired type of fence with a chain link but in a square pattern. The top first rows were bent inward. Mom, till that day she died, always believed she was snatched by a person. Believe me, this was no person. Well, that's my first encounter. I'll send you my second soon. Here's their second experience. It was the summer of 1992, and I was staying with a friend. He lived at the beginning of a dead-end road. We were used to riding our bikes a lot. We rode down this road and back. At the end of the road was an entrance to a large cornfield, and on the right was a wooded area. My friend had a large knife collection. Everything from your basic penknife to small swords and throwing axes. We loaded our pockets with them and strapped a sword or 2 on our backs and bungeed an axe and a machete onto our bikes and took off. We liked heading into the cornfield and chopping our way through the stalks. It was fun. Thinking back, I'm glad we were never wrecked. That would have been pretty awful. Anyway, we got the bright idea to explore sections of the woods on the right. It was pretty thick in there. We hacked our way in. It was bigger than what we thought. After a bunch of hacking and chopping, we came to a small clearing and an old house with no front door. Windows were gone. It was basically rotting away. Looks like it had been abandoned for quite some time. It was weird, though. Out front, there were kid toys. We found 2 Power Wheels, a Fisher-Price kitchen playhouse, a basketball, which they didn't look like they had been there for long, or as long as this house had been abandoned. Upon entering the front door, it looked like a big bird's nest. There were sticks and old rotten branches all twisted up, and there was a lot of old walnut shells and acorns lying around. The second floor had rotted away in a circle. Walking up to the second floor, the 2 rooms on either side seemed to be intact and empty. Couldn't get over the room on the left because of the big hole in the center. Didn't stay in there too long because it
It wasn't clearly not safe. We goofed around for a little while checking things out. Couldn't figure out how all the kids' toys had gotten there. We pretty much made it back to our bikes when we heard a loud crash off to the right and kind of behind us. The weeds were about up to our waist where we were standing. About 10 yards from the edge of the road were our bikes. We quickly darted out and snatched up our bikes, looking back before I jumped on. The best way to describe this is there is a clip on YouTube from rock hounding with Bigfoot called Bluff Charge. The weeds and trees were shaking, and just about when it was about to pop out of the tall weeds, it stopped. It's a wonder we didn't get whiplash from how quick we turned our heads. We jumped on our bikes and were gone, pedaling as hard and as fast as we could. Needless to say, we never rode past the last house again on that dead end. I'll never forget the fear we both had. And tonight's final West Virginia encounter was one that I actually reached out to this person 4 years ago. I had read their encounter on Reddit a while ago, and I said, hey, I really am fascinated by your experience. Do you mind if I share it with everybody on my channel? I had like 2,000 subscribers at the time. And she said, absolutely. But there's more to that experience. Let me send you the rest of it. I said, I'll just do what you shared so far. Send me the rest. And she did. And it's truly an amazing encounter. Let's get into it. I'm a 32-year-old woman from the very northern tip of West Virginia. Most of my life has been lived in Hancock County. When I was very little, we camped in tents, walked everywhere, hiked at parks, all the outside goodness. In my teens, we started going to state parks to ride horses. I've been to Tomlinson Run, Beaver Creek State Park, Salt Fork, Raccoon Creek, and Vista Park. At least I believe that was the name. We had a friend who was constantly inviting us to ride on people's land she had received permission from. I'm well acquainted with the local wildlife. I've seen all the major players, including coy dog, bear. I can identify most sounds in the forest. I loved watching nature documentaries. I was looking to become a vet, so I studied a lot on animals. Drawing and painting them got me very acquainted with animal anatomy. Was I ever into cryptozoology? Yeah, I was a dino-crazy little girl. My one babysitter had Reader's Digest, Mysteries of the Unexplained. I thought of Plesiosaur in Scotland, or the Apatosaurus in the Congo was mind-blowing. Later in life, I started looking at it like it was folklore. It was interesting to read the accounts and learn the theories behind what people were thinking and seeing, but I believed in them as much as a folklorist believes in dragons and trolls. I didn't have any interest in Bigfoot, and I'd never heard of Dogman. I never had interest in looking, nor did the thoughts ever cross my mind. It seems I didn't need to go looking. They found me. We moved to a farm when I was 10. My mom's dream was to have horses, and she was finally able to live that dream. The farmhouse was haunted mainly by former residents of that house. I never felt threatened by them, though it's a little unnerving to have two men talking and moving the couch you're sitting on, or should I say it sounded like it. No one was home, no media was on, and yeah, I was hearing two men talking about how they were going to move the couch and where, and the sound of furniture being dragged right from under me. The land itself had its share of strangeness. Most things were benign, though. I just shrugged it off and carried on. I honestly hated our woods. Anywhere else, I'd freely hike, but even in the yard, sometimes I felt watched. Heck, sometimes I thought Something was staring through our windows. Now that I think of it, we did have things slam into our trailer. I'd think it was a horse that had gotten loose, but when I'd go out to investigate, I'd find nothing. I chalked it up to deer. I used my horses' breeds for their names rather than think of names for them. Anyone who knows me knew my horses' names. I was 18 or 19 in this encounter. By this time, we had given up on cows. God, I hate cows. And just had the horses and chickens. Someone knocked on the door at 2 in the morning. I'd only been asleep for a couple of hours, but years of conditioning had my heart pumping and my mind clearing. Someone knocking that early only meant trouble. It usually meant horses or livestock had gotten out. I was not disappointed. Our neighbor said the horses were in his yard. My mind wasn't totally awake, so I didn't think to ask which yard they were in. My stepfather came out, asked what was up, and told me they're your horses, so deal with it. My mom was working. That was nothing new. This lot of horses had 3 expert escape artists. I had their routine down. It was pretty dark, but I did have some moonlight to help. The security light only went so far. Then, of course, it shut off after so long. When it was cloudy, you literally had to watch that you didn't walk off into a ravine. It was so pitch. I was naturally in a foul mood, cursing the horses and wondering if some drunk had gone through the fence again. It happened a lot. As I got closer to the brown barn, I realized a horse was flipping out. It was running back and forth, squealing and carrying on. I went in, grabbed the halters and leads. I paused for a moment to see if any of the horses had replied to this horse that I heard squeal. That would give me an idea of where the other horses may be, and there was no reply, which was odd. I was thinking, crap, they're on the other side of the hill. It was the only reason in my mind they weren't replying. Let's just say, when they followed our cut trails to the other side, it took us an hour to traverse through those woods and lead them back. And even with 2 guys and a 4-wheeler and my mom, it was a trek. I felt like I was being watched and followed. Maybe it was just paranoia. So the land is set up like this. Brown barn connected to the small pasture, about half an acre long, which then connects to a 7-acre pasture. Pretty much in the center, on the outside edge of the large pasture, was an old white barn that we turned into a run-in. I decided to tackle the horse still at the fence so I could bring her down to the small pasture to keep her from escaping as well. Maybe the others would follow. I had to walk clear to the other side of the pasture to get the panicking horse. It was my mom's Psycho Appaloosa mare. I tried to catch her and nearly got trampled a few times trying. She was frothing at the mouth and her eyes were white, really showing. Was I alarmed? No. As I said, she was a psycho. I noticed the other 6 were across the road. They were standing in a tiny little fenced-in area under a spotlight. They were standing motionless, not touching a blade of grass. I was wondering how the neighbor managed to herd them into that tiny fenced-in little area with that tiny door. 3 of those horses were over 16 hands tall. One was a draft cross. The doorway was actually small enough he touched both sides going through. My thoroughbred mare took me 2 hours to corral the last time she had gotten out, much to my frustration. She was an awesome jumper. So a stranger rounding them up and putting them into this tiny yard was mind-blowing for me. I've had horses since I was 9. I've had ponies, horses, I've had Appaloosas, Arabians, draft horses, quarter horses, walking horses, saddlebreds, thoroughbreds, Mustangs, foals, geldings, mares, and geldings that still thought they were stallions. I've had lots of horses from all walks of life, and I will tell you, they consistently do not like being crammed into tight spaces, especially not in a group. I had 2 severely abused horses I was rehabbing. a thoroughbred that actually had PTSD, and a racking horse that actually took me 3 years to even touch without some sort of bad reaction. They didn't like being stalled. And all but one were mares. Mares are extremely moody, and two of mine were particularly vicious to those they did not like. My walker mare only liked 3 other horses. She should have been kicking the crap out of the others there. Mine also didn't like being under lights. When they escaped, they avoided them like the plague, and not eating grass that's well over ankle deep. That was unheard of. They were silent and dead still. My neighbor came out and told me that they were like that when he found them. He asked me if I needed help, and I said no, my thoroughbred and racking mares didn't like men. I told him I'd take them out one at a time. I took one halter and a lead and threw the rest outside the gate. I put the halter on my gelding and opened the gate to lead him out. They all had other plans, though. All 6 came out as a friggin' unit. They were literally chest to butt crammed together. My gelding and my Walsh mare had their chests pushing against me as we walked back to that brown barn. Normally, they didn't do this. I was wondering what was going on. This is such bad behavior. We were on the main road, which I didn't like. The speed limit is only 35, but people go 60, so I tried to lead them through a large pasture gate. They wouldn't even go on that side of the road. I was a little unnerved by their behavior, so I led them down to the brown barn, and they went in. They were skittish, though, picking at the hay I threw out, walking around restlessly, sticking to the barn like glue, and eyeing the upper pasture. I rationalized it, thinking my Appy was flipping out, and that was what was unnerving them. And why hadn't she come down yet? She had to have seen them all walk down. I rushed to the gate between the little and big pastures out of habit. I didn't want the herd to go back out into the big pasture. I did not have to worry they didn't follow me like they normally did. The gate was wide open, and the Appy is still running, squealing back and forth in the same area. I started to go and get her. Now, our neighbor's security lights didn't really light up my pasture. The road was higher than my pasture, so it was casting a shadow. I could make out her shape in some detail, though. She took off at a panicked gallop, swerved sideways, jumped the stream, and when she landed, she nearly landed on her face. She caught herself, though, and took off at a dead gallop again. I ducked behind a stump. If she would have hit me, I would have been dead. I went back and chained the gate. I decided to forego looking her over until I got the halters and leads. She was too hot at that moment. I decided to walk on the road instead of through the pasture again. The pasture is uneven, unlit, and full of springs. Sometime during this, clouds had taken over the sky, so there was no moonlight to see by. The spot on the road where I was at was paved in pretty well, though my neighbor was paranoid to mention. I had almost gotten to the white barn when I got this urge to stop and look at a very specific spot in the pasture. I would like to say it was instinct that told me to look, but usually I'd scan the woods first to see what was watching me. That's usually where the watchers are. Instead, I just flicked on my flashlight right on this certain spot. It was extremely close to where the mare was flipping out. I saw a red eye shine. My first thought was, why in the world would a deer be here? With all of this chaos, I was feeling a sense of extreme dread, and I did not know why. Besides, it being where my horse was going nuts told me something else wasn't right. I then realized where the eyes were relative to the walnut trees and my racing barrels. See, the road is above the pasture, and the walnut trees were right at the same elevation as the road. The pasture itself sloped to deal with the runoff from that road. The barrel it was next to was on a low end of the incline. The barrels were white, so I could see a dim lighting from a flashlight on one of them it was next to. This thing was too friggin' big to be a deer. I'm frozen standing there watching it. I just had this feeling that it was evil and I had to keep track of those eyes. It was watching me. I slowly blinked a few times. It also looked over into the woods above the pasture. I know you ask your guests if they ever feel there are other ones out there. Well, let me tell you, it crossed my mind. With a sinking stomach, I flashed my flashlight over to the woods to see if I'd catch any eyeshine, which I didn't, though. So I went right back to the eyes. They were still there. I flicked back and forth, making sure nothing was sneaking upon me. I didn't know how long I stood there watching, frozen. Someone could have come around that bend and hit me with their car. I was so focused. Finally, it started to move off. It glanced at me sideways a few times, only one eye. I think it went into the trees around the creek and I heard nothing. That wasn't surprising, though. The horses were still restless and making noise. I stood there a long time after, looking for eyeshine. I was wondering if it could have been a bear. I didn't think so, though. The eyes were constant in height until it disappeared. Bears are clumsy on their back legs. On this uneven, inclined ground, I have no doubt a bear would have dropped to the ground and gone on all fours, even if reared up and dropped down behavior bears do when they are trying to see something wouldn't work. We had one cross our pasture before, and he made a lot of noise going through the woods. The horses settled down quicker with that bear. I was almost to my neighbors at this point, considering leaving a couple $100 of tack at his house. Halters and leads are not cheap. I had no doubt if I left them there, they would be gone in the morning. My mom would have been pissed, so I darted over, grabbed them, and ran like a bat out of hell. I know. I should have just left the tack. I also know you're not supposed to run, but I couldn't even conceive what I had just seen. I got into the barn and threw the tack down and hung with the horses. I wasn't going to go back up that pitch black driveway on foot. I figured with the horses, I'd have a warning, and the barn had plenty of sharp things. I didn't go back until dawn. I was frozen stiff all that rest of that night. I've had years to think this over. It unnerves the crap out of me. How long was that thing there? Was that what was keeping the Appy Mayor from coming down? Was it right there in the shadows while I was trying to catch her, or was it in the unlit barn I had just walked through to get to the road? Was it the reason the Appy swerved and nearly fell? How did my horses get out? I never did find how they got out. Did they panic and jump the fence? I did check the fence line away from the woods. I did look for tracks around the barrel. Sadly, the ground was hard from the frost that morning, but I will say the Appy was running for a good while. The ground was severely torn up and turned into muddy mess. It was high noon when I went down there to check. The ground had melted. I bet it was her that woke the neighbors up. It took them about a week to finally settle down. I don't know if whatever it was still in the area, or if they were that traumatized. So it wasn't long after that my mom filed for divorce. My ex-stepfather got the farm. I moved with her into the city. Even with all the weird stuff going on there were non-bipedal things going through too. I miss it terribly. Maybe it's more accurate to say I miss farm life rather than that actual place. I'd love to go back onto the farm again, but I'll probably hesitate to move back there. I've never told anyone about the eyeshine event. I didn't see the actual creature, Jeff. And really, how do you convey the unnatural horror-inducing feeling? You saw eyeshine, whoop-de-doo. My mom would have given me a benefit of the doubt, but my mother often told family members things. They made my life enough of a living hell. I didn't want to give them any ammo. This next part is the subscriber's second email they had sent me. This part shares more weirdness that occurred on their farm. First order of weirdness, all of the barn cats began to disappear. People were constantly dumping them. We had a hell of a problem, and poof, gone. The neighbors asked us about it, and I told them we had assumed they got sick of them and took them to the pound. They thought we might have poisoned them. We decided maybe the fox ate them, even though the foxes never bothered them before, except the fox family disappeared too. No signs of them. The den they used for decades was falling in. Even my house cat disappeared. She loved lying on the porch. I once found a kitten with its face bitten off like a laser cut. No bone crunching. Creeped the hell out of me. Second major event was similar to the one I mentioned first, except the majority of the horses came up to the house. I walked them to the brown barn, locked them in the lower pasture. That time it was the thoroughbred that had gotten stuck in the upper pasture. The thoroughbred didn't need much encouraging to come down as the appy did, but I still was worried she was going to snap something running around in the dark like that. I just dismissed it as dumb horses. They run through fences all the time and rip them down. Never did it before. Didn't do it after. Even when we had an actual black bear go through. I was checking the fence line about once a week. I found a deer in the far corner. Dead. No obvious reason of death. Figured it got hit by a car. Couldn't make it over the fence and died right there. Except it seemed every week another was piled on top of it. Like literally piled on top. Nothing scavenged them. Just bacteria and bugs eating them. 6 deer ended up being piled up. We decided we were going to bury them. Health hazard, right? All gone when we got the tractor out there. You could see where they had been. Dead grass and body juices, but they were gone. I also noted the horses no longer went back there. They loved that area. Heavily shaded to keep cool and the bugs off. Nice spring. Apple trees. But no fresh tracks in the mud, and the horses wouldn't follow me. At least, not until a month or two after the corpses disappeared. Then there's the event that you shared. Makes me wonder if they had been feasting on the cats. No more cats, so they decided to go into bigger prey. It creeps me out thinking that it could have been inches from me in that pitch black barn or the field. I was totally focused on the horses, not on cryptids lurking in the dark. I noticed one person asking if the neighbor put the horses in the fence, and no, he didn't, as I mentioned. 2 of the horses were terrified of men. Those 2 were also terrified of stalls. I had 6 horses in that fenced-in yard, barely big enough to hold them. They were literally touching the fence, they were so crammed in. The gate opening they walked through, my draft gelding's shoulders shoved the poles outward as he walked through that fence. It was very narrow. As for getting out, I can only guess. They were terrified. They decided jumping was the only way to safety. They had to jump uphill to get out. I still baffle at my draft and my Welsh mare. She was 30 years old making that jump, no fencing down. I'm guessing any tracks inside the pasture was destroyed by that panicking appy, and the ground outside was so hard packed. Something was killing our dogs, ripping them to shreds. My best friend's American Eskimo was ripped apart right outside of her bedroom. They heard nothing. She lived across the street from the farm. A huge German Shepherd in a 6-foot fence. A huge German Shepherd in a 6-foot fence was also ripped apart without the owners hearing a thing. Coy dogs could have gotten the Eskimo, as it was on a chain, but the Shepherd. I can't see a pack of coyotes all climbing that fence and attacking that dog. one would not have been able to take him down. There were more incidents. Didn't know the people, though. I don't remember how long after the eyeshine incident. My paint mayor came trotting up with a weird injury. It was like someone took an ice cream scoop to her shoulder. Like someone or something took it from the top of her shoulder blade and scooped it down mid-shoulder. The flesh just bobbed as she walked, not jagged. If that wound was done in the opposite direction, I could think of a lot of ways, but this was odd and just so clean cut. Not sure if this related, but man, all this weird stuff together. Might as well mention it. We had 3 pastures to prevent pasture fatigue, one being above the house. I only had 3 horses then, the walking mare, the draft gelding, and a racking horse. Well, they started raising hell at around 10 p.m. I go up there, see what's going on. I found my walker mare on the ground, barbed wire wrapped around her legs. Draft gelding standing over her, racking horse nowhere to be seen. I left them, went and got some bolt cutters and my mom. My draft and walking mare were awesome horses. The mare just lied there while I cut the wire off of her. All the while, something big was pacing quadruped back and forth in the woods by us. It stayed out of the light and there was no eye shine. I assumed it was the racking horse, impatient. Her herd wasn't with her. I was mother effing that mare as she was constantly getting out of that fence, but I was focused on the down mare. Racking horse was not in immediate trouble. So I led the 2 horses down. I had all my medical supplies down there, and now the upper pasture fence was compromised. I was expecting the racking horse to follow. It did, but never left the woods. I kept shining my flashlight up there, calling to her to come down. No sign, no eye shine, nothing. Just a heavy body moving through the woods parallel to us. We get to the barn, and guess what? There's the racking horse. Major WTF moment. She had been there for a while. With the damage she had done to the hay bales and the poop on the floor, there was no way the thing following us in the woods was her. She'd have run out into the front of us and crossed our paths to get to the patio. Lots of white. There was a security light. No missing her. Deer? Well, if it was a deer, then it was one hell of a deer. I've been stalked by deer plenty of times. This thing was big, heavy enough for my mom and I to think that it was a mare. It didn't sound normal. Snorting, stomping deer. I guess it could have been a bear. I did go up to fix the fence. I looked for tracks. I found the racking mare's tracks. Followed the clear fence line down to the road. Tried getting deeper to see if I could figure out what was pacing back and forth. The brush was mostly multiform roses, and I couldn't get very deep. I wasn't willing to go that deep, as I couldn't see very far. The final event, a month before my mom dropped the divorce news. I was 27 or 28 at the time. My cousin and I decided to go for a ride. She got caught up in something and arrived late. It was dusk, but it had been too hot to ride as of late. That day was cooler. So we decided, screw it, we're going. Both horses were very experienced in dusk and night rides, bomb-proof, super experienced horses. This was their home turf, no worries. We get to the trailhead. They spooked hard at a cat. I land on my feet. Cousin wasn't so lucky. Figure they were just feeling their oats from not being ridden. I was in the lead, so we get halfway through the trail ride to a tricky hill. A spring runs down it. The ground is clay. It can be slick as hell. I'm keeping an eye on any branches and such my gelding could trip on. I hear my mare squeal, my cousin yell, and the sound of hooves hitting flesh. I look back and see my cousin still on the mare. But my gelding, he's not having it. Full out gallop. He sees me steer a bit, but no slowing down or stopping for the steed. They do not stop until they are at the house. Even then, they are hyped as hell, wide-eyed and frothing. It's totally out of character for both horses. I had a dog attack us once on the trail, ripping my gelding's leg up badly. And he was not freaked out. We dismount and walk them to the barn, letting them calm a bit. Do a once-over, making sure they're okay. I asked what happened. What did she kick? My cousin explained that something had slammed into the ass end of the mare, shoving them over. The mare got her footing and bucked and kicked. She didn't see what it was. She was trying to stay on as a beginner. We were boxed in on a tall brush on both sides. No way to see something coming. Kicker was a few inches from her spine. On the hind quarters was a line of hair bunched up with spit, like when a horse bite each other. Why couldn't it have been that? Well, my cousin had brushed her with every brush I owned. That mare was shining before we started our ride. And it was wet. I brushed it down to inspect it. No broken skin. Let me tell you. Got a solid kick for the trouble. Trust me, hooves hitting flesh makes a totally different sound than wood and stone. Did I go up to investigate? Hell no. After that eye shine incident, then this? No way. Can't help but think the two horses knew what was out there. And it's why they are acting so weird. These two had been through a lot. If they could talk, I can only imagine the stories they'd tell. My mom also told me an incident she had. She was driving to work at around 6 in the fall. She had gotten past Mountaineer Racetrack. It was pitch black. Deer were running. So she was keeping an eye out for eye shine at that moment. She caught something from the corner of her eye. Figured it was a deer, except it was red like a deer in spring. Deer go grayish brown in the winter here, and it was fast as hell. It was not a deer. It was some sort of canine. She was in a Subaru Outback, and she said the head and shoulders were quite high, higher than her hood. It looked like a huge coyote or wolf, except the color and size. She had no clue how she didn't hit it, but it was moving fast enough. She didn't turn her head quick enough to see it disappear into the dark. I can't help but notice these events always happened in late summer to late winter. I didn't look for odd tracks, just Bigfoot, and I'll be the first to admit it. I was looking for oversized cloven hooves after the eye shine incident. Just the level of terror and evil I got from that thing. But I never thought to look for oversized dog tracks in hindsight. In the last year, I've made amends with my stepdad. Go up there for Saturday dinner. Bigfoot would walk in the front door, and he wouldn't notice, so no clue that things were happening. I don't understand this. Sorry, guys. I don't understand all that. In the last year, I've made amends with my stepfather. Go up for Sunday dinner. Bigfoot could walk in the front door, and he wouldn't notice, so no clue if things are still happening. The cat population never recovered. But I do know when dinner was done, I booked it to the car, even though the old white barn has since been torn down and security lights can reach further into the pasture. I do not like looking out there.
And there you have it, folks. I do hope you all enjoyed this night ending bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. And I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is your support, after all, that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories, judgment-free, Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions. Never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.